Hey Creagears, Roboy here and welcome back to a brand new video. Finally, we can do a normal video again. I'm so looking forward to getting to do some more custom amiibos again. Yep, since we finally finished the Octobot, I wanted to do a set of amiibos that I wanted to do for a very long time now. The Alterna versions of the trio of Callie, Marie, and lastly, even Captain 3. After that, we can even look into an Alterna themed diorama. Fine. For now, let's just focus on these three and get started with Callie. First up is the disassembly of the original amiibo. For Callie's Alterna outfit, I first needed to remove her bow and tentacles from the back of her head. This made it possible to cleanly remove her right tentacle, since this one will be draped over the front instead of on the back. But the rest can then be put back in place, which is the little filler needed in the sculpting phase. After the tentacles were the arms. Since I wanted to make her into this waving position pose for our custom amiibo, this required some reposing for both hands. So, with some holes drilled for some aluminium wire, I could actually reuse some of the old parts for this new pose. Here I could reuse this stretch leg for the other leg actually. That way I only needed to make one more new leg. And with the wire for this yet to be made leg in place, I could focus on the arms again. Using the wire for this fun bent arm that makes good use of the normally hanging hand to now be placed up against Callie's hips. With that glued in place, and the leg 2 glued into its hole, I could scavenge through my bag of leftover amiibo parts to sadly find nothing useful to use for the stretched hand for the idol. So defeated, I went back to focus on the missing feet first. But once I got the leg glued in place with some more super glue, I actually got an idea. I grabbed Callie's left arm and pulled the right hand from its arm. Then I cut the hand from the wrist at the bent joint. Then I cut the wrist to have a straight surface and then use some more wire to reattach the hand to the wrist. With this, I was able to transform the hand from a bent pose back into a straight position. Although as soon as I'd cut and heat formed the fingers to be a little more spread out, I sadly saw that we were better off to not use the old arm and just make our own in the next phase, sculpting. I had already done some work on this with some of the arms, the filling of some of the openings on the legs, and the adding of a base for the other leg. Now I had to thin out a sheet of clay and add this around Callie's hips to make her idol suit into the dress that she wears in Alterna. Applying the clay and doing my best to smooth out the transition from the suit to the dress. Then using a flat silicone tool to separate the dress from her legs at the bottom. Hey, come on, it's my first humanoid amiibo in almost half a year. Cut me some slack, okay? Just let me thin out the bottom of the dress by stretching out the clay to make it a little bit longer. Then some touch-ups on the arms that I accidentally touched while working on other parts, and the legs also need a little bit more smoothing. Then I can finally use a pointed silicone tool to add the teardrop shape back into the dress. Then a bit of smoothing around the amiibo. And some cleanup of some of the folds on her legs and the bent arm. Before I grab the base and fill the holes left over by the supports. Lastly, after the dress and the body has had a little while to dry, but not fully hardened yet, I can use the fact that the slightest touch will now not mess up the sculpt anymore, to add some of the filler for the front-facing tentacle. And with a little bit more filler around the original bow to make that nice and smooth, we finished the sculpting on Callie. Then all we had left to do was a little bit of sanding once the clay had dried, and to add a 2mm EVA foam belt across her left shoulder with some seams added with a wood burner. Starting with a lightened skin tone for her face and her arms. Hey, at least it's still in frame. But while we had this squabble, I can at least also work on adding the faded yellow that all three have as their ink color while they are in Alterna. First getting the hard part done with the tracing of the edge of the ink. Before we can then take it a little easier with the rest of the ink. This yellow was then also added to the tips of Callie's tentacles and the details on her headdress. And this now leaves us with the job to add the black to the rest of her tentacles, the back of her head, and then the bow. And with the hair done, we also need to add a lot of black to the dress. Again, first we get the hard parts out of the way with the points where it touches the skin. And around the teardrop shapes on her belly. Luckily, we already needed a black base for the belt, so at least we don't have to worry about that one. But we still need to be careful around the legs, since these are going to be white. And painting white over some black splotches is going to take a lot of layers to get that covered. After the dress, we also have the gloves to paint black. First the one on her hip. But before we continue on the other one, we better get started on that white for her leggings. Since then those layers can dry while we work on the other details around the amiibo, since this is probably going to take around 4 layers. And while that dries, we can then go back to our waving glove. And then finish this up with a base for our earrings. But not before coloring in the shoes. Carefully painting around the white leggings and the little yellow buttons. After all of that black, we have all of the bases done for the addition of the metallic parts. So we can finally add some color to the belt. And a very careful layer on the choker, since we do not have a lot of space in there. Also adding some gunmetal to the bottoms of Callie's shoes. And a bright silver for her earrings. Then we get some mummy's ropes for the insides of the tentacles, like the inner parts of the bow, and of course the backs of the tentacles, both the one on the front and the one coming out of the bow. Then we have these tiny white lines for her closed eyes. And after we got the back of her mouth painted with a mix of blood red and normal red, we can also use this very tiny white brush for our teeth. With all of that finally done, it was time to finish the amiibo with the dots for the fronts of the tentacles with a brighter yellow. Although the bend in her back tentacle made adding those dots a little harder than the one on the front. Even though we still had the reference of the original Callie, we did break away from it a little bit with these very small dots that I have going up the tentacle a lot further. But I do think it makes for a very nice effect with the yellow. Then we finally get the snap of the long and the medium stick that I used for holding her up, and then drill a hole in the base. Next, with the addition of some super glue, we can add her to the base in this cute waving pose. And lastly, we add the gloss to her headdress. Then the tentacles. Then a very small line over the whites on her eyes, followed up with her mouth. Next is the yellow ink on her base. And finally we add it over all of the yellow details on the dress. And with that we finished the first of our Alterna Trio Amiibos, the Alterna Callie Custom Amiibo. Hey Creagears, Roboy here, and we hope you enjoyed our first custom amiibo after the Octobot L3GS cosplay project. It was for a joke at the beginning of the video, but would you guys like to see us make our interpretation of some of the aspects of Alterna? Like, we cannot possibly make all of the 6 islands of the story mode in amiibo scale. But we can combine some of the aspects that encompass the feeling of Return of the Mammalians. By combining stuff like the rocket in the background, the Squid Sisters base, lots of fuzzy ooze, the Moai statues, etc. Would that sound fun? Then we also have a few more amiibos that we wanted to make surrounding Return of the Mammalians. So we would not be mad to make a cool place to store the collection once that's all finished. It seems that that's going to be all from us for now. Keep those creative gears turning, and we will see you guys in the next video. Whew, dodged the bullet there.